Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see here on our channel. And today we're discussing one of my favorite Rolex models, or I guess sub-models. This is the Oyster Perpetual Datejust Turn-O-Graph, reference 116264, stainless steel case, 904L steel, highly anti-corrosive with a white gold bezel using Rolex's proprietary gray gold that will never scratch through and need not be rhodium plated. 36 millimeters in diameter. The watch is svelte, only 11.7 millimeters thick, so it's nice and thin. It measures 44 millimeters lug-to-lug, but if you include the solid end links of this Super Jubilee bracelet, you'll find it's a slightly more substantial 45.2 millimeters across the wrist with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. I mentioned it's a Super Jubilee. We'll talk about why that is in a moment, but first let's throw this watch on the wrist. This timepiece is a 2004 serial number, and as you can see, it's a good fit on a smaller wrist. I can recommend it for a wrist as small as 13 centimeters circumference. My wrist of 16 centimeters has no issues here. This could be your dress watch, it could be your sports watch. It's really qualified both technically and aesthetically to be both. An excellent timepiece and an all-arounder with a wonderful history behind it. Let's talk about the Jubilee bracelet real quick. The Jubilee bracelet was created with the first Datejust back in 1945, the 40th anniversary or Jubilee of Rolex, thus the derivation of the name. Now you can see this is the Super Jubilee. The end links are solid, the center links are solid, and the clasp itself is a solid non-stamped component that features a vertical lift lock system involving a beak and a hook. So it's not friction fit, it can simply pop open. You will appreciate that the removable links are fixed by screws, no pin sleeves here, and actually this is a great sports bracelet. The Super Jubilee, because it's all solid links and quite robust, gives you the solidity of a sports bracelet. No longer do you need to seek out the three-link Oyster here, and it gives you gaps to vent that are actually better than the gaps in the Oyster, so it's just a solid, but it vents better, and that's a good combo. Here you have the crown clasp, made famous by the President bracelet. There is no obvious partition point but the 5-point coronet rolling over to the watch itself. You can see it's a graceful look. This is what you'll see on the Datejusts and the Date-8s, as well as to an extent the Yachtmasters. It's a handsome fluid form without the squared off lugs or the sheer case flank of the super cases. And you can see it's a polish on its flanks as well as its top with a compound curvature and profile, giving way to a Rolex twin lock crown in steel. You know it's a twin lock in steel because it has that little slash below the crown. And then there's a bi-directional rotating bezel that you can use for timing. When the first Turn-O-Graph arrived in the early 1950s, reference 6202 actually beat the 1953 Rolex Submariner to market by a few months, making it the first large-scale production rotating bezel Rolex. There were a few before, but they were relatively scarce. The Turn-O-Graph made the rotating bezel happen. Now, later in the 50s, it was adopted by the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, an aerobatic demonstration squadron, effectively the equivalent of the Navy Blue Angels. So this was actually, at one point, a service-issue watch. During the 50s, the Turn-O-Graph also became part of the Datejust family, no longer its own model, and these went out of production around 2010-2011, so it is a discontinued model that is much sought, easily the sportiest of Datejusts. You have the timing bezel and then a dial in a Thunderbirds appropriate red and white with applique white gold indices. We'll do a lume shot after this. It is not a roulette date. I set it to 16 so you can see that the evens aren't black here. All of the numerals on the date disc, the white date disc, are red. You have that splash of red Turn-O-Graph at 6 o'clock, and of course the red varnished seconds hand with an applique white gold Rolex crown to match the white gold hands and indices. Inside the case, which is screw down crown, screw and case back, water resistant to 100 meters, you have the Rolex manufactured caliber 3135, automatic winding, 48-hour power reserve, 31 joules, quick set date, hacking seconds, 5-position adjustment, COSC chronometer certified, so it's been through the COSC test and run no worse than -4 + 6 seconds per 24 hours. Rolex cases these up and actually exceeds the COSC before it ships them, and that was not just after the superlative chronometer became a concrete thing. That's always. Rolex also includes a number of refinements, such as an overcoil hairspring and a 5-position adjustment to make this a very accurate watch in any position on your dresser at night or your wrist during the day. It has a full balance bridge with a free-sprung index, and this is the same movement in the Submariner and the Sea Dwellers, so you actually get the same level of shock resistance thanks to that architecture. It's also a very smooth winder because of its jeweled staff rotor, its Teflon-coated reversing wheels, and its bi-directional winding action, so you don't hear or feel the rattle of a Rolex rotor. It's very refined, it's very smooth, super premium. This is an interesting intersection between Rolex sports watches and dress watches, Especially on the Jubilee bracelet, this is an uncommon timepiece and an outstanding example of a Rolex for a guy who's not a Rolex guy. This is the one your friends won't have. This isn't the one that's being bid up to twice its retail price pre-owned. This isn't the one that's consumed by hype. For all those reasons, I love the Turn-O-Graph. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And we're back with the Rolex Turn-O-Graph, as you can see, fully loomed by night, beaten away at 4 Hertz.